So now we've got what looks like my final slide, which we'll get to at the very end of this presentation. But if we start at the beginning, what I really want to talk about is design health. So what we're talking about in terms of design health is also what we talk about in terms of our own health. What we need to be is healthy people, right? What we do today in terms of our health is going to be something that will have long-lasting effects. So you talk to any doctor and they're going to tell you, do the usual things, eat well, you want to be doing some exercise, maybe being active. I'm certainly being a little bit active up here. I note that the majority of you have just been sitting around lazily all morning, so maybe you want to work on that a little bit. But the thing is that your health is really important. And the reason that it is important is that what you put in place today, like I was saying, is going to carry you over, and you're going to prevent the slow, inevitable decay of your body. And what we want to do there is make sure that maybe that'll make things better for you in terms of the next 5 years, the next 10 years, maybe 15. But maybe it's 20 years. And that's what TradeMe has been around for. So we're a relatively old product, very, very old in terms of what that is. And you can kind of see a few of those wrinkles appearing somewhat now on the outside. But what's really, really concerning is maybe more the health effects that we're seeing on the inside of TradeMe. So for those of you outside of New Zealand's bubble, I'll just need to quickly say that TradeMe is New Zealand's classified site where you buy and sell anything. It's your eBay, it's your Gumtree, it's everything combined. You buy property through it, you can find a job, you can find a car and everything like that as well. But what's interesting is those things that are going to make a lasting impression really for us, like what does that look like in terms of a healthy product designer specifically? Because that's really what's important here in terms of my perspective on how this goes. So do they look like this? They're outwardly very, very handsome gentlemen, these three. But maybe there's not that much in terms of what's behind them. They've obviously got a veneer. But a healthy product designer, at least in my opinion, is someone who can tell a good story, right? And someone who not only can tell a good story, though, but someone who has an understanding of the story that's gone before them. And so that's what we do as user experience professionals. We tell these good stories, but we want to know what those stories have been before so we can stand on the shoulders of giants. So I want to talk a little bit about the fact that, yes, really love design, as you may have noticed. And specifically, the health of that design in the longer term. So what I live for basically is the enablement of designers to be able to create things that are going to have long-lasting impact, whether that's in the teams that they're in today with whatever product development they're doing now, or it could be a completely different set of teams because people change all the time. So you've got people coming and going from teams. We want to make sure that those people are enabled to be able to make good decisions based on previous decisions as well. And that's what I perceive as a really good long-term sort of health of what design health looks like. And my passion is only going to take us so far. I'll leave at some point, right? Maybe I need to go back to medicine. But what we want to do here is we want to rely on this system that is greater than just the people who are currently there at the moment. So we want to look at design systems. Who here has heard of design systems? Put your hands up. That's cool. Stretch them up a little bit higher though, because stretching's really good and healthy. Keep them up if you use design systems in order to produce some of your work. Cool, I'd say that's half almost. That's a lot of people, awesome. Keep your hands up if you create a design system or you're working directly on a design system. Oh yes, this is fantastic. Very cool. So a design system, basically, I'm thinking of it like a body in some ways. What we've got at the very sort of beginning of what the core is of our health is a heart and a brain, if I'm going to simplify things completely. And you're lucky I didn't become your GP, obviously. But what's really, really key about those things is they provide those central functions. You've got basically the ability to produce some oxygen and get that somewhere. And secondly, you've got a method of regulating things. But that's not really going to hold together very well in the long term. So what we've got to do is think about the other things that go around those like core parts that are there. What have we got? We've got a rib cage, we've got a skull that protects those really, really important things. We've got blood vessels basically that are distributing this oxygen that really, really needs to get to the places that it needs to get to. And you've got nerves that are going to talk between these different bodily functions, right? And so you've got that happening, but you've also got all of those things working together with something like a muscle. What I'm doing now while gesticulating wildly is not actively thinking about that thing that I'm doing, right? I'm not having to say, okay, lift this arm and do this thing. I'm able to concentrate on the fact that I'm actually speaking to you all, which is something that's quite incredible, and it's automatic, and it just happens. And parallel there is that design systems do that for us as well. They've got those really core parts. We've got basically a bunch of components that we can reuse over and over again. But I guess the thing is that then we can spend more of our time as designers concentrating on the things that are over and above those very basic things. So we can spend time on thinking about the user experience of something without having to worry about what a button might look and behave like, or what a form input might look and behave like. We can create the experience and not worry about those very basic things. So at TradeMe, this next little bit is going to be very specifically about our experiences. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about Tangram, and it's our design system. And it's got the core, the heart, and the brain. That stuff is just nailed. I mean, it's beautiful. It's fantastic. So in the very basics of a design system, you've got something like a set of components that you can reuse throughout an application. Pictured here, we have some pagination, and it's a description of what that thing is. So we've got, it shows our users how many pages of content are available and provides a way to step on and navigate through them. Pretty straightforward. You've got what it looks like, and on the right there, you've got the code and how to actually put that into somewhere, which is great because we've got this nice sort of synopsis of what a component is between what it looks like, what it is, and how you can actually implement it. For a designer, what we've got is this lovely sort of a mimicking of this, basically. So we're speaking the same language as what ends up actually in the end product. So in our sketch toolkit, you can just drop this component in. It's going to behave exactly the same way. You can drag it around. You can do things with it. And you can see there's some compact spacing above and some large spacing below it, and we've inserted that, and that's really, really great. But what's really missing here is the fact that how do you actually put the stuff together in a way that sort of suits the system as well, right? So we might want to go around and have a look at, well, where else does this exist throughout the new look TradeMe? Well, we've got a little bit of spacing there in terms of where this pagination is, some search results up the top there, and then an add unit down below. It's all great, that's fantastic. We can just go and maybe recreate this thing, and that's fine. But why? Like, where has this come from? Why do we use that kind of spacing? Why is this pattern in existence already? I don't know, I'm intrigued. I'm sure you all are as well as UX professionals. So while we've got the heart and the brain sorted in terms of these components that we can use to create reusable things, and we've got efficiencies, and that's all really great, there are things that we need to have surrounding our design systems that feed into it and constantly evolve it so that we can keep rolling with some really good design health for the next 20 years. So over the past year, we've been relying on a couple of things like some high-level design principles, some processes for iterating on patterns. We've got UX research, and we're experimenting with a lot more like squad collaboration and those kinds of things as well. So bringing all that stuff together has been much more effective in building what is the new look TradeMe. So with these 5 things, and they're just examples here, obviously this list is much, much broader. There's so many things that you could possibly put into a design system or support it further. But they're the things that go around things in order to be able to provide that communication between the heart, the brain, and everything else that goes around it. So let's start at the top. So these are our TradeMe design principles, and when you're looking at design principles from the perspective of a design system, we kind of need to assume 2 things. One thing is the fact that it actually, the design system itself adheres to the design principles in the first place, so that we have this cohesion of it. And secondly, design principles, and other people have articulated this much better than I ever can, is the fact that they are long-lasting. They're principles. They're not some sort of feature or an outcome or something like that. You're not saying that one of my principles is accessibility. That's not one of your principles. That is something that underpins or supports one of your existing principles. For example, that would be good business, basically, because you're able to have a larger addressable market and you're serving the right people and that kind of thing. But what's really good about design principles is that it's a fantastic sanity check as well. So say right now, I might be able to look at a particular design and say, yeah, cool, this aligns with what we've communally agreed to be a thing, and this aligns with the design principles. Awesome, this is good. And it's going to be like that not only today, but if the design principles are those kinds of things that are more broad and actually have something that is not just the very basics of what good design is, then you should be able to have that in the next 20 years as well. And where do you surface that stuff? When you look at anything or any product that you produce, we've got basically context, right? So we've got designers who are going to Tangram, which is our design system, to refer to particular components, put together the hearts and the brains, and make the connections there. But what we want to see is that everywhere that these people go, they're going to be able to get a sense of these principles. So yep, it should live in the design system. And that's going to be a recurring theme you'll see. As we get a little bit more specific about this, we've got design patterns. So design patterns are great because they put together all of our components into nice reusable things that, as you're all very much aware, you can have, our users will build up sort of that model of what a pattern is and how it works across basically anything in our applications. So that's really, really great, and it's an obvious next step that so many design systems are obviously integrating into their design systems so that people can refer to them. But it requires a method, I find. So here's an example of some ghost states, for example. And it's just looking across the business, for example, step one, across all the different things that are going on in the world. We'll look at Slack and Facebook and that kind of thing. And so where do these things exist? And then you want to bring them together and maybe discuss them with a subset of your team. And then you've got other use cases. Perhaps you need to upload some photos as well. Does that fit into this thing as well? And then we sort of share this problem, and then we form a group. And there's just so many steps here involved in actually coming up with a pattern and how we can do this stuff. And it kind of seems obvious. But the important thing is that this is written down somewhere and actually documented, and that we can do this stuff and we can test these things, and they're included in our design system site as a pattern, which again seems like an obvious next step. And then you iterate on that. But the thing is, you really want to document the process itself as well, because unless you're documenting this stuff, you're not going to know how this is going to work or how you can iterate on this process. So where would we want to put this thing? Because again, looking at context, where are you going to go to find the process of creating a new pattern for TradeMe? It's going to be in the design system again. And going back to that iteration, like the process is not ever done. You can never have a process that is perfect. That process needs to be continually changing over time as well, much like your design system is, as it reacts to various improvements throughout the web or more input from the application that it comes from. I quite often get asked what a particular piece of research is in there, in terms of like the UX research that we've done. And we have one of the best wiki pages for our user experience team. It's fantastically organized. You can look at it by any kind of tag, business area, by date. It's all fantastic. But the thing is, I still quite often get asked, where's this research that's gone into this particular pattern? So if we want to talk about the fact that we want to take long-term design health view, people need to be able to say, well, I'm here contextually, where's the research that I'm looking for? It should be right there alongside the very thing that they're looking at. So in this particular beautiful pattern for how we treat cards at TradeMe, we should be inserting what that UX research is that's gone into that card and into how we structure these things, so that we can understand as designers much more the why that's come before all the things that we're doing. So we can pick up a project and continue working on it, knowing full well what's gone into it. Which kind of leads into the entire history of a project. So we're looking at design history rationale as well, and ways that we can put that into design system or support the design system so that people can have a history of those things. again, being super specific about TradeMe, but we use a tool called Abstract, basically Git for designers, and it's just all the assets are there available to everyone to go have a look at, which is fantastic for transparency, and it's also a complete history of what was done. But why was it done is the next question. So why did I put in place certain things for a particular project? I can go find some sort of long-winded document somewhere in Google Docs, if I even find it, and then maybe I'll find something in there that might suggest why something's been done, or the history of a particular thing. But let's think about that context again. So where's the best place in which to put this stuff? So this is where something that sits outside of the design system supports the design system, is the fact that when I go and open a sketch file from Abstract, I'm going to get the history of this stuff. And I can see here, you can see here, I've merged a whole bunch of stuff into this master branch, essentially. And you can see what was done, which is fine. So at least we've got the context right. But it's not particularly helpful in terms of figuring out what the thing is that I've done or why. So I kind of propose this, and to varying degrees, we do this at TradeMe. But pop the cats is not particularly helpful, but it does sort of say what the thing that was done, but more importantly, it's why it was done. What is the question that I'm attempting to answer here? That's why this is really, really helpful to give context. So in short, the context of what a designer needs in order to be able to do their job effectively in the long term is really, really key. And so we've tried this stuff by going through and creating some principles that we can align with. We've got processes around what we do in terms of pattern creation and identification. Got that UX research just at the very forefront of where you're actually going to be looking for the thing. And a complete history of not only the what was done for a particular project, but why it was done in the first place. Because once we've got that why, we're going to be able to give a lot more to our designers if they're picking up a project, or if they're new to a team, or if they're just trying to understand a particular problem space in the first place. And of course, nothing really exists without people, because we want healthy people. And so the people are the things that are actually going to be key to making this stuff happen. The idea that you want to create a healthy system, not only for yourself in the future if you're going to pick up this project again, but for anyone else who's going to come along as well. So as designers, we want to put in a little bit of effort now in order to be able to reap the benefits later, and basically slow the inevitable decay and downfall of our design systems. So let's leverage our design systems by putting things front and center exactly in them that they need to be able to see for those people, like we do as good UX professionals. And so if you're in the midst of a design system yourself, I'd love to have a chat about that, because not only can we prop up our design systems within our organizations for the fact that you can have all these things that surround it and make it better, but we can prop up each other as well in our design systems and help each other out, because it's much the same thing. Thank you.